What is up, guys? Welcome to another Tuesday, another episode of Tradesmen Talks with Wilson and I. We're hoping we can serve you a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of value, and we gotten some requests, so we're gonna riff on that a little bit. And due to many messages and DMs about me trimming my beard, I have done that. So you're welcome. You know who you are. I'm just kidding.
I know at least one that tells me to tell you look like a hippie every time he talks to me. So,
hey, I respect hippies to a larger respect. So, depending on who they are,
right.
Yeah. So we had some requests on talking about some proposals. We wanted to talk a little bit about the benefits and some disadvantages of doing everything yourself in the business for too long. There's definitely advantages to doing that at the beginning, but doing that for too long can start to come with undesired results and costs. Yeah. And so we'll just kind of riff on that today. But let's dive into the request first on how we went about creating our proposals, different tips or approaches that other people can implement when it comes to creating their proposals. And for those of you who are new getting into the industry, maybe you're on the fence of starting your own business, or you just started and you're somewhat figuring things out still, a proposal is simply a way to define what the customer wants and giving them a price for it. And it can be super simple or it can be extremely complicated. And we can kind of go into the different approaches to creating your own proposal.
Well, one thing that I think is really interesting is when a lot of people start, it's like you have this idea that if I go and I have this really good interaction with the customer, I'm definitely going to land the job. Or if I know that I'm the best at what I do, I'm definitely going to land the job. And it's kind of not true, at all, because the customer doesn't know how good you are unless it's a direct referral. So, that concept isn't that great. And, it's really interesting. We may really like somebody when they're with us in the house, but as soon as they leave, I can't tell you how many times in my life somebody has called me thinking I was somebody else. We're selling the same service, right? I guess they meant to call them and then they signed up for my services because I was the one they called by accident, right? Like they don't always remember you when they leave or when you leave. And so it's like proposals are one of those things. I think like your documentation, your paperwork in general, it's a very simple, low cost, easy to implement tool that makes you look infinitely more professional. When somebody has and I've seen guys like they do their entire bid, it's like on a piece of paper that, there's no letterhead, there's no nothing. They just left you kind of a piece of paper that they wrote on.
Right.
I'm like, dude, what am I? Okay. Half time I've had guys do that, leave it with me, and they don't even have their phone number on it. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this, man? What is that even? What was the point of that? And so,
yeah.
We can take people through, and I'll share so people can actually see.
Yeah, they can see what we're using. And to preface all of this, it's never a bad idea to have a local construction attorney look over your proposal so that they can make sure it's not only compliant, but it has other things in there that can protect you in certain cases.
Yep.
But as Wilson pointed out, your proposal is a way to leave an impression with your potential customer. And though some people that have maybe been doing their trade or providing their service for decades, at one point they were able to get projects consistently through word of mouth because the internet didn't even exist
right
at one point. And so they were relying off of word of mouth and reputation, and their proposals didn't have a lot of influence because the homeowners didn't have an easy ability to compare that contractor with a bunch of others to consider. They would ask their friends and family, and if John the carpenter had a good reputation, they would call John for a quote. And if they liked John, he would write his stuff on a piece of paper and they would hire him. Nowadays, with the internet, a lot of your potential customers can compare you to other people before you even show up. And so when you get there, you, of course, want to provide an amazing and memorable experience. But when you leave, they're going to have other appointments and you don't want them forgetting you. And so having something to leave them as a way to remind them of who you are and how you approach your business is going to be an effective way to increase your odds of getting that project. And so a proposal is not simply a way to give them a price. It's a way to represent you and your company, and you leave that with them.
Yeah.
And so, Wilson talked about a piece of paper. Nowadays, we all know that we can do things digitally. And I would like to point out that I have, with my businesses, we have tried both approaches. We have done things purely digitally, and we have done things old school with paper. And I will tell you that we have had many more conversions with having our proposals on paper.
Yep.
And actively writing on those proposals with the homeowner, and they look messy. And of course, we always send a digital version that is much more, that's itemized, of course, and it doesn't have any scratched out areas or whatnot. But that proposal that you leave in person ends up becoming a collaborative agreement. And you've kind of worked with the homeowner. Maybe you started with a higher price and you've had to make adjustments in order to make it a win-win for the homeowner and yourself. And so creating that collaborative document and leaving that with them is a good kind of step in the right direction.
It is cool that you mentioned you do both, right? Because for some people, having the professional in your email, digital high-end version makes people feel good. And again, it's checking off the professionalism. I tell people that with their websites all the time, right? Your website needs to look professional, not because they're going to read every piece of copy on your website, because I guarantee you they aren't, but they are going to look at it and go either, wow, this looks like a good website, or, oh, this looks like shit. Right. and if that's the reaction they have to your website, if you can't do your website well, why would you do the other work well? Right. It's literally creating the ongoing idea of artisanship. Everything we do is beautiful. That's who we are. We stand for that beauty. And if you can create that, but it doesn't have to be hard to do any of this stuff. So hold on, actually you can't see my screen. Can you see the Google Sheets thing now?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So for anybody that's wondering kind of how we do this, these are all templates that we use in the business. Because for the most part, you need to know how you're going to do all the different parts of the business. So let's see, we want the proposal template. And this is part of the reason why, the students that work with us, I think start so fast, is because instead of having to try and figure all this stuff out, it's already done for them. Right. So and let me see if I can find ECCs as well. So they can see what one looks like when it's completed.
Yeah, this is a way that you're going to be able to lay out your customers or your company's contact information. So you, of course, want to have your logo, your website, your email address, your phone number, that basic way of being able to communicate with you. And then underneath that, you want to go into what the actual work is going to be. And so after you've built that rapport with the homeowner in the house, you've had that conversation of what their vision is, you've gotten an idea of what their budget might be and what you have to work with, you then want to start laying out the service that you're offering. Yes. And it may be a very simple one type of service, or you may have a need to itemize different things. But after you establish your contact information, you then want to go into the customer's contact information and then start listing out the services that you're going to be providing. You guys may know that we focus on cabinet refinishing. And so after the customer contact information on that proposal, we start going into the different areas of the home that we might be refinishing cabinets. The primary one being the kitchen. And so we're going to list out a price on there. And I don't necessarily like to have my calculations or my formulas on that proposal, because though you want to have a structure to creating quotes, you don't want to have a specific calculation in a way that your customers can scrutinize and make their own calculation and then come back at you with their perspective on how their kitchen should have been quoted. You want to give them a an easy to read price for, in this example, the kitchen, in the kitchen only. So you're going to have many other factors that you might be considering in that price, but you don't want the customer saying, oh, well, I actually have 14 doors instead of 16. And so shouldn't it be less? Or, can we take this off or that off?
Right.
You may need to collaborate on the scope of work like that, but you don't want to have to continue to adjust the price in a way that creates more confusion for the customer.
You can't let yourself become a commodity is really what it comes down to. Like
right.
If they look at your proposal and they go, oh, well, this is what it costs, they're going to start looking at other proposals and they're just going to see if they can like bid everybody kind of like price for you against each other so you can get the cheapest. Like you want to give them one price and have a really clear value behind that price. Otherwise, they're going to try and part you out and break down all these little pieces, and it's going to be this never-ending negotiation.
Right, and that can apply with so many other trades. Whether you're a trim carpenter and you're installing crown molding, well, you might charge per linear foot, but if there's a lot of different angles in that room that are beyond normal, you may not want to add confusion by saying, oh, well, here's a 40-degree angle versus this one's 65, or you got 3 returns in this room and all of that hassle. You'll just want to put a price for that room. Or if you're installing windows, your calculation might be per window, but you don't want the owner saying, well, this window is smaller, so why is it costing the same as the bigger window, and all of that mess. So you want to have your way of calculating, but you want to present the pricing in a very clear way that kind of keeps the calculations behind the scenes.
Yep. One thing I think that you mentioned earlier that's kind of worth talking about, and I guess you'll see it in this proposal. In a perfect world, you want to have your proposals and all your agreements reviewed by a lawyer, right? In a perfect world. However, having something is way better than nothing, right? Because there's a very real thing that happens when you have paperwork like this. And so, we break down the price, and then we also give them things they need to be prepared for, right? Like they can't cancel a job before a certain period of time. They can't, they can't ask us to move their fridge and then hold us liable if something gets scratched, right? There's things that are in this specifically to protect us. And even if one of these things may not hold up in a court of law, right? Lots of customers that have signed this will go, I'm not going to try because it's here. So not having a lawyer review, it's not a good reason not to have a proposal in the beginning. Now, as your business grows, you should absolutely have a lawyer review it, because you don't want to be in a situation where it's void because you screwed something up. But even the risk that you've got documentation, a lot of times will make otherwise unruly customers come around and be a little more friendly.
Yeah. And what Wilson is showing now on the screen are different disclosures that we add in there. And this is somewhat of a evolving portion of the proposal, because as we have learned things the hard way, we try to proactively speak to those things in the proposals of future jobs. And so things like, not for our service, we do cabinet refinishing. So we often have to tape everything in the house or mask everything off that we don't want paint on, simply put. And so when the walls that we're having to cover up are maybe wallpaper that has been who knows how many years old, or there's special finishes on the floor, or there's other vulnerabilities on the job site, regardless of the trade that you are in, that you don't want to be held liable for because there's unknowns involved. And you want to proactively speak to that risk or that chance, and you want that liability waived. So if the unfortunate event does occur, you don't lose all of your profit, or costs you even more money on something that could have been proactively addressed. And we have had, a lot of different things, from houses getting flooded to kitchens catching on fire. And, we like to tell our members of Cabinet Startup, there's not many things that they could go through that we haven't gone through ourselves. And so out of those experiences, we've created proactive ways to speak to those things so that they don't become a worse situation down the road.
One thing to think about, though, like even if you're in a different industry than this, Most of I always laugh when I'm talking to our students is, sometimes they'll be like, well, why is this in here? I'm like, oh, because Steven's got a horror story. That's that's the primary reason that's in there. Like, this clause right here, clause number 2, that was definitely like, 8 or 10 different $500 losses. Like clause number 6, that was like one $14,000 loss. Like all these things got here because there was a horror story. But there's several in here that are there because we don't want horror stories. And when you're looking at your own proposal, if you don't want to do it the hard way, like imagine Murphy's Law. Like what's all the stuff that could go wrong that is not your fault, that's out of your control, that you would argue your case for. If a homeowner was like, yeah, it's your fault that this wallpaper is messed up, I need you to replace the wallpaper. And then they're like, oh, well, it doesn't match the wallpaper in the rest of our house. So now you have to replace the wallpaper in the rest of the house. We're not going to pay you. And that kind of stuff will definitely happen, right? So it's like, think about Murphy's Law. What could possibly go wrong? And then put it in the proposal.
Yep, exactly.
But you can't, for the record, ever proposal your way out of bad workmanship. That's not gonna happen.
Right. And unfortunately, sometimes you'll have customers that take things out of proportion or that become unreasonable, and pointing things out on the proposal isn't necessarily going to change their perspective of you at that point. If anything, it's going to make them more upset because now they're not only mad at you, but they're mad at themselves for not reading the document, even though they signed it. And so unfortunately, that's why it's so crucial to provide a great experience from day one, so that when things do come up, you don't have the hostility against you. If they already are dissatisfied with you and then something unfortunate comes up, you're going to get slammed even worse because now they have a really solid reason to be mad at you. Yep. At first, it could have been some ambiguous opinion, or something that, is outside the realm of reasonability, I'll say. If they just didn't like that your technician has a tattoo on his arm, you're not going to be able to do much about that. But if they didn't like your technician's tattoo and the technician scratched the crap out of the floor, now they're going to be super mad and they're going to, raise hell to try to come down on you and your company as much as they can. So you want to try to provide that great customer experience, and you want to have the backup with these contracts to not make a bad situation worse.
Yeah. Well, in this, one of the things that comes with that, because, you kind of alluded to this, it's like, because they didn't read the document. The reality is a lot of the customers, even if they read this document, even if they go through it with a fine tooth comb, within 1 week, they will have forgotten everything they read. They won't remember any of it. Wild. They won't, they will put their initials next to something and be like, no, I never did that. Right. Which is like something we talk about all the time in the training, is like everything has to be signed. There is no such thing as a handshake agreement, because you making a handshake agreement, you might as well save yourself some time and just cut your own hand off. Right. Like you are going to lose every handshake agreement ever, because there's nothing.
I like to tell people, sorry, cut you off.
No, go ahead.
The rule of thumb I like to tell people is you never want to be in the position of relying on memory or interpretation. And that applies to you, your team members, your customers, your vendors. You never want to rely on memory or interpretation, because people are people and their memory changes and their interpretation will inevitably be biased towards what they want.
Correct.
And if you don't want the same things because of an experience or circumstance, that relying on the memory or interpretation is often going to hurt you. And so, Wilson brought up that a lot of these homeowners, they don't read completely, or they forget about these proposals and contracts that they sign. And I will tell you that is undoubtedly true. And so we go to the extent to where I felt like we were becoming insulting to these homeowners, because a big thing for us was a timeline of the project. 90% of our jobs are completed within a week, but there are many things that can affect the true timeline of the project. And they could come from many different directions. And canceled clearly is a word that we're struggling to spell.
But I preached them both of them. Yeah,
it does look like this is an older proposal, but they will get the gist of it.
Right.
So you want to over communicate the most important things many times, because even though they sign the contract, their perspective and their opinion is a huge factor regarding the experience that they'll have. And so you want to try to over communicate these things and not just assume, oh, it's in the contract, so I don't need to tell them anything else. I'll go back to what I was saying about our biggest issue when homeowners get worked up is on project timeline. They believe sometimes that we are guaranteeing the project is done within a week. And even if they become unavailable and don't allow us to work on their job for certain days during the week, even if they add work to their project, even if, let's say during COVID, there was a supply chain issue, when we weren't getting products for months sometimes, there's legitimate reasons why the timeline would need to be extended. And they will raise hell sometimes because you didn't finish within a week. And even though our contract says we do not guarantee a timeline, they will swear that we promised it'd be done in whatever timeline is in their head. And so we, of course, have it on the proposal, but we also send it again in our emails before the project starts. We have automated text messages. We have automated emails. I even give my technicians what I call an introduction sheet that has an FAQ on there, along with other information about the technician and who to contact for what. And it says, again, we don't guarantee a timeline. And it's almost like it's repeated so many times that I started to feel like this was becoming insulting. But we still have had, because, the more jobs you do, statistically, the more occurrences of unfortunate events are going to happen. It's just the law of statistics. The law of large numbers specifically. And so we're doing elite cabinet coatings, 10 to 12 jobs a week. And so you're going to get someone that misinterprets something or has a bad day or has something that causes them to become upset as a person. And they might express that frustration on us as the company, for whatever reason that sometimes happens. And they'll get mad at the people that are literally serving them, working their butts off to provide a service that they're paying for. But not all your customers are going to be happy people. And so they're going to look for reasons to stay mad. That's just what people tend to do. When they get emotional, they look for reasons to maintain those emotions, whether you're happy or you're sad or you're mad. And so if they're already upset and they're looking for reasons to be upset, you want to try to be as proactive to those things as possible. And so over communication is the best thing you can do to avoid misunderstandings with the process of your service or the timeline or what you're providing. Over communicating. So before the project starts, you want to communicate what you're going to do with this proposal, but you want to do it also again before you physically start the project. And then I have my technicians, I make sure that they are explaining what they're planning on doing that day. If it's the next day, they explain what they did the day before, and they remind them or update them on the rest of the project's timeline so that the homeowner feels like they know what's going on all the time. Now, if they aren't communicating that properly, it can leave for gaps and it can allow for assumptions to take place within your homeowner's mind. And that's when things can sometimes go astray.
Which is a good time to plug one of the two things every conversation we have always ends up in either standard operating procedures or mindset. Because if you have a good mindset and good operating procedures, it's real hard to screw up the business, right? It really is. To kind of give you guys an idea of what that looks like, because you're relying on a lot of different steps there, right? You've got the proposal that has to go and has to be right. Then the technician is going to show up with a work order. And then Steven's team, they have like hey, this is your tech. It's actually an intro letter that comes with it. They will have gotten an email, typically with a video explaining what's going to happen that also outlines the job's going to be that long. And then they're going to get another email that has the proposal documentation again. But you'll see let's see. So people can have an idea of kind of what this looks like when when the tech is going to the house, right? The tech has an actual process that's literally will look like this, right? Step, step, step. Now this is our sales process because I clicked on the wrong link, but right, it's going to be the same thing each time. All of the SOPs are going to be designed that way because your tech is going to have to remember at every job, especially when he's getting there, these guys do this for a living. it doesn't make sense to a lot of techs. Like, why am I going to tell this lady that today I'm going to be mixing this paint and spraying, because she doesn't even know how a spray gun works? And the point is, it doesn't matter.
And sometimes they believe they do know how a spray gun works.
Oh my gosh.
So to have that conversation with them allows their nerves to get settled a little bit, because they want to feel that you are an expert. And if you're just doing things at whim and you're not communicating what you're doing, they might compare what you're doing with what's in their head on what you should be doing. And if that doesn't line up, then they might, we had this happen recently, so it's a very fresh memory, where you'll have homeowners that feel like they're an expert. You know, when we're working in home services, you're going to work with potential other home service providers. They may not even be in the same service that you provide, but they will carry themselves as if they are potentially. And they want to just make sure they understand everything that you're going to do. And they may have, previous beliefs around what you should be doing. And so to have that conversation on what you plan to do that day, and giving them an opportunity to ask questions and for you to provide answers, it's going to make you a much more competent technician. It's going to help with your communication skills, because even if you're just a technician, you should still be able to communicate to your customers. And it's going to allow your customer to feel confident in what you're doing. And it's going to create a much better experience for everyone involved.
Yep. It's also a chance to build a relationship with them, because if they see you as a human and not just a worker bee in their house, they're going to respond to you and treat you better. So for people that are wondering, this is what it was supposed to look like. This is the actual thing. But like literally for every single day, every single step is laid out, so they know exactly what they are going to do and what they need to do and how they need to do it. And so when you're thinking about the proposal, kind of like bring this all back to the beginning, you're going to wrap this up. You want to think about all of the different documents and processes in your business kind of this exact same way. It is a chance to, one, brand yourself and look super professional. Two, it's a chance to take a lot of the guesswork out of it, because it's when the same way every time, it's really easy, right? Like nobody stresses out about how they're going to tie their shoes, because they always do it the same shoe first every single day. Even if you don't think about it, you always do it the same way. Like you want to create these systems that enable your business to kind of have that same function, because it just makes your life so much easier.
Yeah. Well, to kind of double down on the requested topic being the proposal, one thing you could do to at least get the ball rolling is to just Google, blank proposal in your industry and use that as a starting point.
Yep.
And then you can make edits and revisions, but at least gives you somewhat of a structure that's relevant to your industry, whether you're in plumbing or window installation or house painting or cabinets. You can just Google the form and you can use that as an example or template. And then, as we mentioned, have a construction attorney look over it, because they'll probably have some other disclosures to add in there that you may not be thinking about. And that may be specific to your county or even your city. And so that's always a good idea, but you can start the momentum by just Googling blank proposal within your industry.
There's not a lack of resources out there for you to work through this stuff. Like with everything we teach, and I tell our students this all the time, we're not teaching stuff they can't go find elsewhere, right? Like it all exists. Nothing that we have done other than our, charming looks and incredible sense of humor is really that original. It just isn't. We're teaching stuff that already exists. It just happens that we've applied it here. And that's a good thing to keep in mind. Like it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be done.
Right.
You'll perfect it over time.
Yeah. So if that's been on your mind that you need a more professional proposal, let's go ahead and put that on your to-do list or put that on your calendar. Commit to getting that done within X period of time, because that is a way, as we've talked about in previous episodes, to build momentum and start chipping away at this big goal that you have. And as you knock out these tasks or these micro goals, it's going to get you closer to the overarching goal that very well may be to build a business that works without your day-to-day involvement. A lot of you might be in the position to where you're doing everything yourself. And we've talked about also on a previous episode, the benefits of doing everything yourself. It allows you to build a healthy sense of expectations when you're delegating things. It allows you to build a level of competence so you can explain things to your customers. It allows you to build confidence in yourself because you have the awareness and understanding of the different areas in your business. And so you'll get confident in some things that you're good at, and you'll understand some of the less than good things that you're having to do, so you can delegate and recruit a team to do some of those things for you. But if you're positioned to doing everything yourself for too long, sometimes it can become a self-perpetuating cycle and a habit, because you're able to do everything, and so you keep your business at a level to where you can continue that habit. And you may have the desire or ambition to grow, but that discomfort it would create to step outside what you're doing day to day is sometimes enough to keep people in the same position. Just because you're able to work super hard and you're making good money, but your work-life balance sucks and you're content with that enough to keep doing it, it doesn't mean you don't deserve your goal. You started this business with a purpose, with a mission. And if you're happy with what you're doing, then great. You know, everyone's goal in life ultimately is to be happy.
If
so
you're
if you're happy,
actually happy.
Yeah, if you're actually happy.
Are like, oh yeah, I mean, it's not that bad, which is not the same as happy. It's not that bad. It's not the same as I love it. And you should, you should really like think about that. A friend of mine said to me one time, he's like, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no.
Right.
And you should be honest with yourself.
Well, if they're not aware of areas they can improve, they're probably not even watching this podcast anyways. So assuming you're listening or watching this, you probably believe that you're capable of more, you deserve more, and you're ambitious to grow your business to the next level. And so start by taking these tasks like creating a professional proposal, like looking for a salesperson, or finding a helper that you can train into becoming another tech or installer for you. Start those things so that you can look back and look at the things that you have accomplished. But take all these things out of your head, write them down, and create a plan to start chipping away at it.
Yep. Create the plan and then review the plan. You do those two things, it'll go really, really well.
We are running out of time a little bit, but I introduced the call with the idea of talking a little bit about the costs to doing everything yourself for too long. And one of them might be obvious. If you do everything yourself for too long, you're not going to reach your goal. But also, it's more than likely going to impact your relationships. You're going to dramatically decrease the ability to have a healthy work-life balance if you are working 80 hours a week. And if you're doing everything in your business, it's likely that you're not a rock star at everything in your business. And so there's very much possibility of there being an opportunity cost. If you're not a people person and you're the only one going to your estimates, you're probably leaving money on the table because maybe you're not the most approachable person, or maybe you're very introverted and you have a lot of resistance of following up with people because you don't want to talk to them on the phone, or you don't want to build rapport. Some of these things that might be your weaknesses that you're forcing yourself to do is generating an opportunity cost that's holding you back and is either costing you money or costing you potential profit.
Probably both.
Yeah, likely both.
Likely both. Yeah. And you have to get the one before you get to the other, but like you got to figure out how it's costing you short term so you can make enough money to reinvest into getting out of it.
Right.
Which is, I think, the hard part, because man, when you're doing it by yourself for forever, I don't know, you see this, people do this in a lot of things. People do this in workouts. Like you'll see people that like go to the gym, but they're doing the same thing they've been doing and they get static. Or you see people in relationships and they're just static. It's like we humans are creatures of habit. And if we're not consciously thinking about how we're going to get out of the habit that we're in, we will stay where we're at. Unfortunately, the world doesn't do that. Like you will stay where you're at, but you'll get old while you do it, right? You'll stay where you're at and things will change around you. Other people will go past you. Like if you're not, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah. Or some people describe it as entropy. Entropy applies to everything in this universe. Everything is slowly dying.
Yeah. Let's on a positive note. Yeah.
But you can influence that process. It may be an inevitable outcome, but you can certainly influence your experience. You can influence the process and the time it takes. It probably wasn't a good example, but
I love it. We're gonna go with it. I'm a nerd at heart, so I'm about the entropy.
But guys, really focus on, what can move the needle a little bit closer to your goal, whether it's building a proposal, whether it's creating SOPs. Wilson shared his screen, so you saw a little bit about what our SOPs look like. They are not fun. For most people, it is not fun to create that, but there's such a huge advantage of having that made, because now I can train people so much faster. I can delegate things so much more efficiently. And, I wasn't the only one that created that. It was observing the experiences of other people. It was asking other people questions. I happen to have been the one to type it all up, but you don't have to. If you have someone that is maybe a little bit more administrative, you can have a conversation with them, and that person can help you type all of these things out and organize your thoughts. But you have to make that a priority, because it's going to be very challenging and frustrating for you to grow a team without a standardized way of doing the things within your business.
Yeah.
And so that's just another reminder. And we'll harp on that, I'm sure, for episodes to come, because it's so crucial for you growing a business. And with that, guys, I really hope you have a fantastic rest of the week. If there's anything we could do for you, please send us an email at support@cabinetstartup.com. Regardless of what trade you're in, a lot of the systems and challenges within the business are universal. And so we'd be happy to help you. And if you have any feedback or other suggested topics, feel free to shoot them over to that address as well, support@cabinetstartup.com. We'd be happy to riff on it. So I hope you guys have a great rest of the week, and we'll talk to you again next week, same place, same time.